This is video 2 of your linear equations focusing on slope. When we're talking about slope, we're talking about the rate of change of our graph that we look at. When we look at slope, it can be both positive and negative. When I think of positive slope, I like to think of climbing up a set of stairs. As I am traveling across on a graph, from left to right, I would be going upwards. Negative slope would be the opposite way. It would be like sliding down a slide. So if I made a graph, my x and y axis, it would be going down. That's an important thing to keep in mind. We'll look at this a little bit further as we keep going. One of the best ways to remember slope is that you must rise before you can run. This means in the morning you have to rise and get up out of bed before you can run and walk ahead. So, if we look at our notes here, we've said that positive slope is like climbing stairs, which means from left to right you'll be going up, and we said negative slope is like sliding down. This means when you're going left to right, your graph will be going down like a slide. So we've also said with slope, you must rise before you can run. When we look at slope, this means we are looking at the rise over the run. Let's take a look at our first graph to help understand this concept a little more. Yesterday, we talked about slope as vertical change over horizontal change. Another way to say vertical over horizontal is to say our rise over our run. Let's try and find the slope from point -4, -1 to 0, 2. When it says rise, that means we start at our bottom point and we count up as many times as we can until we reach our second point. So here we are rising up 1, 2, 3 times, and we are running across 1, 2, 3, 4 times. That tells us that our rise over our run is +3 going up and +4 going across. Let's try this again from point 0, 2 to 4, 5. We must first rise up 1, 2, 3, and run 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could say the slope of this line is 3/4. There's another way to find slope on a graph. Aside from counting our rise over our run, we can look at slope from 2 points. When we have slope from 2 points, the rule is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Remember, our y values are our rise or our vertical change. Our x values could also be called our run or our horizontal change. Now, what's y2 and x2 and y1 and x1? Those are a pair of points. So if we have an ordered points x, y, the first pair would be x1 and y1, and the second pair would be x2, y2. Let's look at these on a real graph. In this example, we're going to use the points to find out the slope of our graph. First, just looking at our graph, do we think our slope is going to be positive or negative? Remember, positive is like climbing upstairs, and negative is like going down a slide. What do you guys think looking at this one? If you said negative, you were thinking the right thing, because our line slants down, like going down a slide. All right, let's look at our slope first. Let's pick 2 points on our graph to try out. How about -1, 4 and 1, 0? In our first one, we have that y is 4 and x is -1. This could also be thought of as x1, comma, y1. On our second point, we have x is 1 and y is 2, or we could say x2, comma, y2. If we use these points, we could see, so we could use our slope formula up here. We might be able to say that y2, which is, that's right, 0, minus y1, which is 4, would be our rise, and that would give us a value of -4 over our run, which is x2. You're right, that's number 1, minus x1, which is -1. Now remember, when we have minus a negative number, we could also say plus. So in this situation, we could say 1 plus 1 equals 2. Now if we simplify our fraction, we have the slope being -2. We could also see this if we did the rise over run on our graph. If we started at a point, we would know to get to our next point, we have to go down 2 and over 1. We fell down 2 and we ran 1. We went down 2 and we ran 1. So there's a lot of ways that we can find slope when looking at graphs. Now what about the slope of a horizontal line? A horizontal line is going straight across. How about we use our formula to figure this one out? Remember, our formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. In this one, let's say this over here is our x1 and y1. And let's say 5, 4 is our x2 and y2. Here, we could fill in 4 minus 4 over 5 minus -5, or we could say 5 plus 5 if you would want to. If we simplify this, we get 4 minus 4 is 0 over 5 minus -5 is 10. When we have 0 in our fraction, that would tell us that the slope of this line is 0 because it's in the top of our fraction. Now, let's look at what would happen if we had a vertical line. We could use our formula again to find the slope of a vertical line. In this case, if we set up our fraction, it would be the change of our vertical values, remember? So we would say 6 minus -2 over the change in our horizontal values, that's our x1s, which would be 3 minus 3. If we simplify this fraction, we would get 6 minus -2, or 6 plus 2 is 8, and 3 minus 3 is 0. Now this is a big flag. When we see 0 on the bottom of a fraction, that means that it's undefined. We cannot have 0 on the bottom of a fraction. So the slope of a vertical line is undefined, and the slope of a horizontal line is 0. That's the first part of learning slope to use in our linear equations.